Ever been to like a wedding or a party, I don't know, any kind of event really, where the entertainment just felt, well, off?
Yeah.
Like almost like an afterthought, like someone just kind of spun a wheel and booked the first name they saw.
Right, like they weren't really thinking about the vibe or anything.
Exactly. It's amazing to me how quickly bad entertainment can like totally overshadow, even ruin what should have been a good time. And that actually is a perfect segue into what we're looking at today, OmniEntertainment. They've been a Kansas City staple since, get this, 1988, so you know they're doing something right.
Yeah, over 30 years in the business. That's impressive.
Right. So today we're going to figure out exactly what that something is. We'll delve into their history, their whole approach, and how they've managed to not just survive, but like really thrive in a really tough industry for so long.
And what's so interesting about them, at least to me, is that they're not just like some new company.
Yeah.
They've been a part of the Kansas City music scene for decades. And like anyone who knows anything about Kansas City knows that it has this like incredibly rich musical history. I mean, we're talking deep roots in jazz, blues, and way beyond.
Oh, for sure.
So for Omni to have not just survived, but thrived in that environment for so long, well, it makes you think that they must be pretty deeply connected to the city's, cultural fabric,
Yeah, for sure. It really makes you wonder what stories they could tell. Like imagine seeing that evolution from those days of like booking gigs by phone to this whole online world.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
And speaking of their range, they really do seem to live up to the omni in their name. I mean, we're talking jazz, country, DJs, classical, even magicians. They even mention catering to nightlife needs on their website. It's like they've got every possible base covered.
Yeah. And it's not even just like a random jumble of acts. You get the sense that they've really thought about this. Like they've carefully curated their roster, which knowing how diverse the music scene is in Kansas City makes perfect sense, honestly.
Oh.
They also seem to be really big on planning ahead. Like contact us well in advance is practically their tagline.
That's so true.
So for those of us who might think booking entertainment is as easy as like sending a couple of emails, can you walk us through it? Why is it so important to be an early bird in this scenario?
Well, imagine like a musician's schedule, right? It's not even close to as simple as finding an open date on their calendar.
Right.
It's way more about like coordinating travel, maybe rehearsals, and a lot of times even fitting in with, other gigs that they might have already booked around the same time.
Wow.
And then on top of all of that, you've got contracts, technical requirements, all that fun stuff. It's honestly kind of a surprisingly intricate process when you really think about it.
Contracts, technical writers. Yeah, that definitely sounds a bit more complicated than just picking a band you like on Spotify, that's for sure. So give us a peek behind the curtain here. What's like an example of a technical detail that tends to trip people up?
Oh, sound systems are a big one.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because every single venue is different, and most bands have really, really specific requirements to make sure that their sound, that they've worked so hard on, comes across the way they want it to.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Neglecting these kinds of details, even just a little, can lead to a muddy mix, feedback, really, all sorts of not fun headaches that can, take away from the experience, which is the opposite of what you want.
Yeah.
So, yeah, communicating early on, like they always say, is definitely key if you want to avoid those kinds of pitfalls.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It really does make you realize, like, how much goes into making sure those technical aspects are handled right. Which actually reminds me, Omni really emphasizes top quality and meeting diverse needs, but like, what does quality actually even mean when we're talking about entertainment? Like, beyond someone being good at what they do, obviously.
Totally, and that's a really good question because quality in this world, I mean, it can mean a lot of things.
Right.
Obviously, talent's a huge part of it, for sure, but it goes way beyond that, I think it's more about professionalism, really, about being reliable, showing up prepared and ready to go, but honestly, most importantly, it's about being able to understand the client's vision, like really getting it. You could have like the most talented musician on the planet, but if they're not the right fit for that particular event, it's just not going to work.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
It's not going to resonate.
So it's almost like Omni is like this filter, making sure the acts they represent aren't just, talented, but also professional and, like you said, understand what makes a good experience.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's all about, vetting acts and really getting to know like their strengths, what their style is really like, even down to their stage presence and everything.
Yeah.
And then you have to make sure all of those things line up with what the client wants.
Makes sense.
It's about everyone having a good time, you know, not just like checking things off a list.
Right, exactly. And speaking of creating the right experience, I noticed they mention nightlife needs on their site. And it kind of got me thinking, like, booking a club, I'm guessing that's a totally different beast than, say, a wedding or some kind of corporate event. What's the difference? Like, what kind of specialized knowledge do you need to navigate that world?
Oh, you're telling me. Nightlife is a whole different world, honestly. It really is.
Right.
You got to have your finger on the pulse, you know? You really need to know what's hot, what people are responding to, and what the overall vibe of the venue even is in the first place.
Oh, yeah?
Like, just imagine booking a string quartet for, I don't know, like a high-energy product launch or something.
I'm cringing just thinking about it.
It would be a disaster.
Total disconnect.
Right. And that, like, right there, that's exactly why having experience, like, Omnis is so crucial, you know? They've been dealing with the, like, ups and downs of the nightlife scene there in Kansas City for decades now. They've seen it all, trends come and go, venues come and go.
Wow.
So they bring that, like, really deep understanding of the scene to every single booking, making sure the entertainment they're providing actually complements the atmosphere, instead of clashing with it.
That's such a good point. Makes you realize how much goes into it, making sure the music and the setting really work together.
Absolutely.
And, it makes their longevity that much more impressive.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is a world where you can literally book almost anything online now, right?
Yeah.
What do you think it is about their approach that's allowed them to not only stay afloat, but really thrive in such a rapidly changing industry?
Honestly, I think it comes back to something we touched on before, relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple, Omni has spent decades building trust and rapport with people in the industry.
Right.
They have close ties with a ton of artists, local and even national, and super strong connections with venues all across the city. That kind of deep-rooted network isn't something you can just, replicate with an algorithm or something.
No, totally not. It's that, like you said, human element.
Exactly.
That understanding of, like, the little things, those unwritten rules of the game.
That's it. It's the difference between blasting out a generic email and being able to, pick up the phone and call someone you've known for 20 years and be like, hey, I've got this client. This is what they're thinking. Who do we know that would be perfect for this? There's just a level of trust there and insight that you can't get anywhere else. And that is something that Omni has clearly worked hard to cultivate over time.
It really is incredible when you think about how much goes on behind the scenes to make these events that seem so effortless, actually come together.
Yeah.
And speaking of behind the scenes, I noticed something kind of interesting on their website, like their contact form. It's not just your typical, like, name, email, message kind of thing.
Right.
They're asking for, like, a lot of details, like a lot.
Yeah.
So why the deep dive into the client's needs?
Yeah.
Why isn't a simple, we want a band enough?
Well, it all goes back to what we were just talking about, that really personal touch, that dedication to truly understanding every little nuance of what the client wants.
Right.
The more information Omni has to work with up front, like the size of the event, the kind of atmosphere they're going for, even their budget, the better equipped they are to recommend the perfect act, the one that truly fits. It's almost like they're playing matchmaker, but instead of romance, it's about creating that spark between the audience and the artist.
So it's less about, like, checking off boxes and more about really exceeding expectations.
Exactly.
Uncovering those hidden desires a client might not even know they have.
You got it. It's more like saying, okay, so you think you want a cover band, right? But based on everything you've told us about the vibe you're going for, we actually think you might be blown away by this up-and-coming indie group we know. They're using their expertise to really curate a whole experience, not just book a band.
That's such a good way to put it. It's the difference between just hearing music and, like, really feeling it, connecting with it.
100%. And it's that attention to detail, that commitment to creating a truly cohesive experience that really speaks to the art of what Omni does. They're not just, like, booking entertainment, they're creating memories.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of OmniEntertainment.
I agree.
But before we go, I want to leave you with this. Think about the best event you've ever been to, the one that really wowed you. Now think about one that was, well, let's just say not so great.
Yeah.
What role did the entertainment play in each of those? Was there an Omni behind the scenes, carefully crafting every detail, ensuring the music truly resonated? Something to think about.
Because at the end of the day, Those events that really stick with us, the ones we truly remember, they don't just happen by chance. They take a ton of planning, a really deep understanding of who the audience is, what the atmosphere should be, and that often invisible art of bringing people and entertainment together in a way that just works. And from what we've learned today, that seems to be exactly what Omni Entertainment has mastered.